Yep. But until then.
You can't start a council meeting unless it says 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock.
Guess we're not starting.
It's a goal, huh?
Yep.
Welcome everyone to our North Ogden City, I call it council meeting on here, but I kind of labeled it vision meeting so we can kind of look to the future. And so meeting will now come to order. Invocation and pledge of allegiance will be given by John Call.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to Thee for this day, for the chance we have to meet together as a city and to talk about our community and the things that we can do to make it a better place. We're grateful for this earth and for this wonderful country. Please help us to have Thy Spirit to be with us, to be guided to know the things we can do to help make this community a better place and to be kind to those around us. We love Thee and we say this in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, John. Starting off the agenda, first item on the agenda is public comments.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I stand as a representative of the senior center next door. I'm the chairman of the board over there. Randy Wynn, 2412 Barker Parkway. This year I'm the chairman over there of the board, and I want to express our gratitude to the council here in the city for the support that we receive from you. And also for the support we receive from having a council member there. Blake Severine represents the city on our board and is a good help to us and gives us the support we need, and I appreciate that. In that this kind of is a part of the budget process, I would also like to request that you renew the $25,000 that we receive in financial support from you each year. That's important to us. In fact, we could hardly run without it. So I do appreciate that in the past and ask that they will continue to support us in that way. Again, I thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move forward on the agenda. Purpose of our meeting today is to get city council, staff, and citizen input on the direction the city needs to be going in projects and operations, to brainstorm some of these ideas and come up with others. The city has been going in a positive direction for a long time and needs to continue in that direction. Growth will continue, and we'll need to attract new businesses to receive revenues to operate the city. Today we need to think outside the box and come up with strategies for the future. I guess I realize that this year is a year of elections, and speaking for myself and the council, we don't want to become lame ducks. We want to continue on and moving the city forward in a positive way and seek your counsel and direction from staff and the citizens as well. We sent out a survey with some questions, and we had a significant amount of response. I stress it is not a scientific study, but ideas were expressed, and we encourage more for future planning. Some of the more pronounced ideas were as follows: And I kind of separated those into three categories and picked out the ones that were highlighted primarily the most. Some of the activities that were expressed were farmers market, family entertainment, sports, education and arts, and local entertainment. Then I separated a group called New Infrastructure. There was quite a few responses for a bubble for the pool, so we can use the pool for year-round use. Some of them asked for a recreation center, and that's a big one. I looked at the one down at Farmington, and that's quite a huge building, basketball courts, volleyball courts, weight rooms, exercise rooms, all kinds of things. And of course, that's a significant undertaking and would take some time to move on that one. Continue to complete the amphitheater. It's completed on the outside, and it won't be complete until we have the interior finished up with bathrooms, change rooms, plumbing, and some electricity in order for it to function as it was designed to do. Biking and hiking trails, develop Barker Park, improve traffic and roads. I might mention in regard to that statement, in my previous employment, I've probably driven on every road across the Wasatch Front in all the different communities, and North Ogden has done a good job with their roads. I salute our public works people for the great job they've done, and we have to continue to work on that. There'll be potholes, there'll be cracks in the road, and in the future, and now and in the future. And so, but I appreciate the condition the roads are in North Ogden. We need a new public safety building. The old Cracker Jack building we have over here is long past its useful life. And in order to protect the citizens and provide public safety, we need to have a new building over there. The other category I mentioned was business. There was several that wanted some sit-down restaurants. Shopping center to include big box stores and some small businesses. So these were kind of the predominant requests that I pulled out of the survey. And we need to determine some priorities regarding these and other ideas that may be generated in the meeting today. I recognize we'll need further study and discussion before finalizing our plan. So this group today, I would just open up, solicit your response regarding ideas, opportunities. You may want to talk about having read the survey, and maybe there's some other things on there that I may have missed. Or you may want to discuss some of the things that I have mentioned or highlighted today.
So, just the public safety building has been on the minds for several years now. Has anybody even looked to see what we need? I don't know, Chief, if you have, or what we're talking about, size, cost, anything like that? Has anybody even thought about that or put numbers to that at all? Or
We had kind of consulted with an architecture firm just to get some ideas of how we could go about doing that. And the biggest question was the location, because that's going to determine the footprint. So, once we had some locations in mind, we could then maybe come up with some different footprints, or maybe, how high versus how wide type of thing. And then we would want to probably go visit some newer facilities, get some ideas as far as what's working these days and what's not. I've got an idea of the minimum of what we would probably need, but then you also want room to grow. So, and then depending on how far out, it's cheaper to build it now and use it later than it is to build it later when you need it. So there's some questions that we need to answer before we can really come up with.
Do you have like
That's all the answer.
what's the minimum ballpark? I mean, are we talking 5 million, 10 million, 20 million?
5 million was kind of thrown out there, but you know, give or take.
You guys just built a new fire station.
Mhm.
About that, is that about how much it was?
We were about 3 million, 3.5, but the other sub-state smaller. It's probably a lot smaller than what you guys would need.
We did build a fire station at the Hillfield. It was about 5 million.
Yep.
So that's what I was kind of guessing. What sites have you even considered, or would the old public works building site work or not? Or?
We talked about that. My biggest concern with that is that the majority of the city is on this side of Washington Boulevard.
Okay.
And there's not a light right there at that intersection to come out. So to cross busy, you know, during rush hour, during busy times of the day is inherently going to be dangerous. That's my biggest concern. Otherwise, you know, I think the size of the lots would be ideal, and location's not too bad. It's just that being on that side of Washington Boulevard. Another would just be the existing site. Do a tear down and then rebuild right where we're at.
Take some of the parking off.
And then the single house that's left right here. I guess if that was purchased, that'd give the city the majority of this block. So it would create some suggested, and I don't know the complete details to tell you whether it's a good idea or not, was that we kind of do a remodel on this building and kind of add a wing, a public safety side, and maybe that economically could be beneficial. So all kinds of options.
Okay. I just know it's been talked about for years. And so that was one that when you mentioned it kind of stood out. So thank you.
Personally, I think it'd be nice to have added onto this building and maybe a larger city council room in between the two. And have the public safety all part of our building.
That might be a good idea too, in lieu of last week. I mean, we were pretty much the you can hear people come through that door, but you can't see who they are until they're right here in this room. So not only are we vulnerable, but those girls at that front desk are also.
Yeah, there's some things that could be done differently with
It needs
the
to
current
be.
facility, you know, to make it safer.
Yeah, it needs to be. It was a wake-up call.
We also need to think too that as the city grows, staff's going to grow, so they're going to need more room here too.
True.
You know, so not only police officers, but so you're talking adding on here, that may be a more economical way. I think we ought to we'll start looking at that. I mean, when we were gearing up for the public works building, and that I don't remember, we were putting in money every year in a budget for the public works building. Do you remember how
We
much?
started to. Yes.
Put it like 100,000 a year or something like that.
Yep.
Maybe we ought to start thinking about setting something not like that up for a new public safety building. You know, as we study it out. Just a thought.
Well, and this, actually, that's a good example of part of the reason for this meeting is we've always talked, hey, we need a new police station, we need a new police station, but if we don't set a deadline and a goal, then we're not going to start saving for it, and we're not going to, you know, eventually the only option left to us is, hey, we need to bond for the whole thing. And I don't think that's something that anyone wants to do. And so the idea is set a goal and then work towards it, and then do that same thing for these other categories or other priorities, you know, set a goal and work towards them.
One conversation we've had also is if we have a plan, something like what John's talking, then as the economy changes, you know, we expect the economy to slow down. At some point, we may be able to take advantage of lower costs of completing the project. But if we have some money set aside, it'll be easier for us to be able to pull the trigger when the timing is right.
Any other suggestions regarding the public safety building? We can move on to other items that we've mentioned.
I think as we go through these, we ought to set some kind of priority. And if I'm looking at a bubble on the pool versus public safety, one certainly has a higher priority than the other. And I think
Bubble?
And vice versa, like Barker Park over at Rec Center.
Yeah, I think there are priorities, there are ranking if nothing else, an idea of where we would think the most important projects first, public safety. I mean, that's got to be handled at some point soon. You know, a rec center, you know, things like that. Barker Park would be high on the list.
And the amphitheater.
Yeah, completing the amphitheater. Some of these seemed like things to do more than, and some seem more like projects, you know, like public safety building, completing the amphitheater, a bubble over the pool. You know, those are projects. You know, family entertainment, that's more of a service that's provided. The sports, it's more of a service. Farmers market, same thing. Trails is more of a, you know, something that needs to be built. Anyway, those are the thoughts I had as I was looking through the responses on the survey.
That's true. Basically, we need to set priorities based on some of the things we want to consider.
They are working on a trail down around, a beginner's biker trail down in Oakland Park. So that will be something. I said it has to be easy so I can do it, or else it doesn't count as easy. It's a beginner one.
Some of these things they've mentioned on recreation, Tiffany, what's your ideas there?
Well, we'll be bringing to the council this next council meeting for some of the programming type things. We'd like to propose using the city's municipality ramp grant. It's $1 for every citizen based on the last census, so it's about $18,000, and we'd like to propose that funding be used this year for that kind of programming for festivals, music nights, movie nights, and the kinds of programming that was mentioned in here. So I'll bring that to you at the next council meeting.
How's the turnout for the movie night at the pool? Has that been pretty good?
At the pool, it's a couple hundred, usually 100 to 200 people. Movies at the park, we've found that a lot of it just depends on the consistency of it. If you know that there's a movie every Monday night in June, then more people show up. If it's Monday night and then Friday night and then Saturday night, or if it moves around places, then you have less attendance.
They mentioned farmers market. Where would we organize something of that nature?
We have North Ogden Park could hold a farmer's market, Barker Park could hold a farmer's market. Those are probably the two parks that I would look at doing it out of, but we've been in touch with the Weaver Mortgage Department, so I've looked at these and we kind of had an idea that farmer's market, we've scoped out some of the other cities that have them, what's worked well for them, what hasn't, what kind of permits are required, and so we think that maybe that's something this year that we look at doing in August.
Huntsville has theirs in a park, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And then Ogden has theirs right downtown.
Mm-hmm. And Harrisville City has theirs at their main park as well. I've been to that one, and a lot of that will just depend on the community and getting the word out and participation that way. So we've looked at it. It would be similar to organizing kind of a mini Cherry Days every Saturday. So, fun ideas.
I've never been to the ones at Ogden, and they're very well attended.
Mm-hmm. Ogden Cities is very well attended. They've actually added a winter farmers market inside at the Union Station because it's gone so well.
We could have some more farmers.
Yeah. So we've been researching the kind of permits you'd need at the booths, what kind of fees we would have to charge to recoup costs of operating that, and what else we could have, what other kinds of activities. If you add music to that, bands, if you add art to that, we've had a couple of people, we used to have an art show at North Ogden Park.
We used to do that, but then we kind of disappeared for several years, and then we started the Chalk Art Festival. Kind of took over there. I thought we could do something there, I guess, too.
Yeah, the art festival they used to have was more of a fine arts.
Yes.
And there wasn't a lot of attendance or participation for that.
Tiffany, are farmers markets typically city-sponsored events from what you've seen?
Yeah. Yeah, most of them were.
I don't have pneumonia, but I just got a cough. I got one. I changed my brand. I don't inhale.
Any other ideas that any of you have picked up along the way that, as we begin to look down the road?
The thing that, I'd sent out an email out, and I think we need to look at this as a city council, but it's gonna happen in the next few years anyway. We have several key personnel that are getting close to retirement. Annette, we got, Bruce Higley, Lieutenant Crowthers, getting close, Tiny, Rob Scott, and those are some very key personnel that we need to understand how we can attract new people to fill in, and what we're gonna do to replace some of those. Obviously, I think hiring within is a great idea, but we still need to think about that. And that's it's not gonna happen everybody this year, but it can start happening quick. And I think we need to start thinking that we plan as a city for that. I don't know if anybody has any ideas on it. I don't have any great ideas of it, but I just think that's something we just need to think about, take into consideration. One of the things I know with inspectors, they're hard to come by, and that's we have the new, what's his name?
Nate.
Nate, yeah, and we got Nate and Bruce. And then is Kerry still?
Gary's still some part-time.
Still part-time in that for us, but he's just doing plan review, correct?
He mostly office work. Last week he did fill in when the other two were out on training. He filled in and did all the inspections for the whole week.
So those, honestly, the inspectors are hard to come by right now. To have all the certifications and have them, they're hard to come by. I think Annette, the city recorder, that's gonna be tough shoes to fill. Not that the others aren't either, but those are two that stick real prominent in my mind. So I'm open for any suggestions you have for
Can't leave.
how we.
Can't leave. We'll pass an
Not
ordinance.
even sure.
We'll pass an ordinance.
Don't say that.
But yeah, I think you're hitting it right on. The point of this discussion obviously is to talk about 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road and where the city's at. There's in the survey that the citizens provided a lot of event type ideas, and obviously we can't start them all, but it might be good to pick one and say, hey, we really want to focus on this one, get it up and going, and then the next year we'll add a second, maybe a spring type festival of some sort, or that's kind of the hope, is to get the council to give the staff some direction on where you want us to focus our efforts.
Come on, Ryan, you got something to say? No?
More fire hydrants.
Not yet.
As far as events.
We're great with fire hydrants.
As far as events, we have Charity Days,
Talked about
the
it.
Chalk
5K.
Art Festival. What's that?
5K.
Yeah, well, we have the half marathon too, don't we?
We have the half marathon, 5K, the glow run, the Christmas lighting, polar plunge, a few others. We've been looking at other options, possibly, like a trunk or treat option, a Halloween type option. farmer's market, music in the park, movies in the park, festivals, camps. You know, we have Arbor Days, a lot of things that they're smaller, but there's still activities and events that go on.
I'm not gonna be a doomsayer and stuff, but it seems like we do a lot of events. That's my personal feeling, is we do a lot of events. People want more events. I don't know if it's our job as a city to entertain everybody, but we do events, and I understand that builds community and stuff, so I'm not kiboshing all those, but I think, you mentioned that we ought to have some goals. I think we ought to, 5 years down the road, I think we ought to have a new public safety. You know, I think that's something that we ought to aim for if we need a goal, if we're targeting 5 million minimum, I know Salt Lake City built theirs, and that was like 30 million, but I think theirs included the fire department too, I think. But, I mean, I think that's more eminent than entertaining, honestly. I don't mean to be mean about that, but it's like,
Fun sucker.
yeah, I'm a fun sucker, I guess. But,
I feel the same way, but we need to entertain.
Yes, you do.
But we need the police department too, more.
well, but I think we
need.
I think we do. I mean, July we have 4th of July.
Yep.
August we've
Chalk
been doing
Art.
the Chalk Art Festival. You know, we have all these other events, and I don't even know them all because I just don't. You know, I'm pretty entertaining myself, so I just don't know all.
You entertain yourself a lot.
Yeah.
Well, you know, as I'm looking at these, I've got a number 1 next to the public works safety.
That's okay. We know what you mean.
It's a long Tuesday. Public safety building, you already got yours.
Yeah.
Stop it. And completion of the amphitheater, I mean, with a complete amphitheater, a lot of the event type things have a venue to go to, whether it's, a movie in the park, a farmer's market, all those kinds of things. We've taken in the completion of Barker Park, where'd that go on here? Those 3 would be my top priority. Probably get that amphitheater done since we're so close anyway. Start working on the new public safety, and then get Barker Park completed. Then we have, I think, the biggest chunks taken care of. We have with Barker Park completed, we have all kinds of space and venue to do movies in the park and to have family activities and those kinds of things that are community oriented by getting those things done.
So Phil, you'd mentioned one time, and I'd walked out, maybe you brought it up, that you had said you may consider bonding for Barker Park.
I'm not consider bonding. What I want to do, what I'd like to do, and Annette, I need to work with you on this, and I've talked to a number of people throughout the city about it. I'd like to have that question on the ballot and let the citizens decide whether or not bonding is, we would choose whatever kind of bonding it is to finish Barker Park. The reality is, saving until we have enough to get it done, we're looking at $8 million.
I think you're low.
I agree, but 8, if it's, just say it's 8, 8 to 10, let's call it 8 to 10.
The process for a ballot, for something on the ballot like that, you'd have to pass a resolution to decide what you're going to do first.
Okay.
Well, you can do some bonds on the ballot, can't you?
Well,
That go bond, is it general obligation that goes to the
general
ballot?
obligation.
So the process would be then that as a city council, we would pass a resolution saying we'd like to consider bonding to finish Barker Park. Is that the correct language?
No.
We would bond, we are going to bond, and then we would put it on the ballot.
No.
Okay?
Councils can't put things on the ballot. You can't put a thing like saying, we want to build an amphitheater, so
Right.
Who's for it? You cannot do that. You've been elected
Right.
to make a decision.
Okay.
You make a decision. The only way that can go on the ballot is if there's a referendum.
So a citizen,
A citizen could say, well, we don't want you to bond for that. And they bring in enough signatures, and there's a referendum, so it can be on the ballot. But you
Okay.
cannot put it on the ballot.
Okay.
You could have never put the amphitheater on the ballot.
Okay.
And it's,
So
you can't do
so
it.
the way effectively then that, with the way ballot laws are written, that we get this on the ballot is for us as a council to say, we're gonna bond for Barker Park.
No, you
and
just
then
pass a
the-
resolution.
or a
And
resolution.
it's up to the citizens to
And
decide.
then the citizens who would, because we obviously have citizens in our community who are not in
Just like
favor
what
of
happened
bonding.
with the public works
Uh-huh.
building. The council had bonded, where it was bonding to build the public works building, citizens filed a referendum, and it went on the ballot.
Okay. And
And
so
it
that's
was
what we
voted.
have to do, is pass a resolution so that then a citizen or a group of citizens then can get do a referendum against that, and then that's the process to get it on the ballot. Okay?
So I think maybe there's the option of general obligation bonds.
There's a general, well,
So that,
So-
doesn't
it
that go to
depends
the
on
ballot?
what that is.
But that's like the
though.
library. So the library was a general obligation
Yeah.
bond. And there's a, and I can't remember the exact which one it is, but there's one bond that you can only do with voter approval.
Will you look
So,
into that for
yeah,
me, please?
we'll find out which one that is and,
That could be put on the ballot then.
Yeah.
but we'll coordinate it. But it's also really hard because it's very specific, like with the library, they said we're doing these things with the money. And there's a whole lot of legwork up front.
Right.
The council would essentially have to make a lot of decisions up front, and so it's almost like a referendum, except it's set up from the beginning as a ballot decision. But,
And there's certain things you can do with
yeah.
the general obligation bond. You can't,
Right.
you can't just, yeah, we'll look into it.
Okay. I'll work together with you on that so that, because I hear both ends from residents out there. There are residents who are very against bonding for anything, at any time. There are a number of residents who, including some of the Barker family, who think bonding to get that park done would be a great idea. So, I mean, I'm willing to sponsor that resolution, for lack of a better term, right here, Blake. Or if we can, if there's the other type of bond that would have to go through a public vote and let the residents decide what we do in that instance. So I'll work with you on that.
So we've also talked about a scientific survey that we could do to figure out what the public opinion is.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is it'd be easier to go that route.
Yeah, I think with the public opinion, though, you'll always have individuals on both sides of the argument who say, I wasn't polled, I didn't get a call, and, there's an inherent distrust of
But you also have people that don't vote.
polling. Absolutely, you're absolutely right. But at least with a vote, everybody who is of voting age has the opportunity
Yeah,
to
that's true.
register and participate in that poll, if they choose. Where a random sample scientific poll, it's randomized, and you may or may not, and it's not up to you whether or not you participate. But I think both. I think the scientific poll is a good way to get some initial idea of how residents are feeling, and then we can go from there and let the residents have the final say on what happens.
If you were to hit this election, it has to be by April, you told me?
Yes. I don't know the exact date, but it's in April.
Hush.
Mush.
Okay, if you're gonna look at
I'll get you some extra.
the bonding aspect of it, do you want to bond for the park or bond for the police department, or?
Well, I was just thinking, the Barker Park is the piece that I think ought to go to the citizens. I mean, obviously, we need a public safety building, just like we needed a public works building, and we have to do what we have to do to make that happen. But on something like the park, that, as nice as it is and as wonderful and crown jewel of the cities it'd be, you couldn't compare it on a necessity scale as the same as you would a public safety building. And that's why I would want the citizens to make that decision. And if we're gonna ask them to bond for $8 to $10 million to finish that park over the next however many decades, 20, 30 decades? 20, 30 decades.
That's a long
20,
time.
30
That's a
years,
long
boy,
time.
20, 30 decades, that'd be quite a bond. Cost you $1 a year,
I
right?
know, yeah. That wouldn't be so
Oh,
bad.
good heavens. I think I need some caffeine. But, yeah,
Some
I
merit in
think
that,
that,
in the fact that those who will be using the park will be paying for the park.
yeah, that's, I mean, that's one way to look at it, is that those down the years that are using the park are the ones that are actually paying for it. Those of us that die off, we won't be paying for it anymore. I'm looking at you, Mayor. No,
I'm closer than you.
I know, that's why I was looking at you, because you're always giving me a hard time, so I thought I'd give it back to you. And then public safety, you know, we just have to, I think, approach that the same way we did the public works building, and save what we can, do what we can, pull from within as much as we can, and look at the most economical way to go. Do we renovate and add, or do we tear down and rebuild?
Well, we've got 5 different roofs on that building over there because of renovations and adding.
And the
I'm not
footings
sure
are
if we can
falling
do it
apart.
anymore.
We've got,
The footings are falling?
we've
in?
got exterior
they're
walls,
sinking.
interior now.
They've got some.
The sprinklers were getting Clark's ankles wet the other day. Inside.
Yeah.
So the typical life on a building like that is around 50 years, and it was built in the 60s.
No, was it really?
So it's,
It's been there as long as I remember.
you know, so it's near the end of its useful life, and so it's, you know,
I think we take that all into consideration.
Just a matter that it doesn't function as a police department now compared to what the functionality will be in 5 years. I mean, obviously, it's just gonna get worse. We just overtook our training room to put somebody in it. That's their office now. We've kind of made do for evidence purposes, but we've got 2 off-site storages for evidence.
Right.
And who knows how long those are gonna last. One's the old public buildings.
That was my question for the council, see what direction they wanted to start going with that.
Well, I know the building that I'm in at work, we were looking at renovating or going to a new building. And it's cheaper to go to a new building for us than it is to renovate the space we have to a useful state. I was shocked at how much more it is to renovate and redesign from the inside than it is to just go do a new building. And so that's the decision we're making.
Yeah. Well, that, you know, like I said, the architect was the one that kind of suggested that adding on to this building would be maybe the most economical way to go. Because I think this building could use some renovation, and we learned a little bit the other night, you know, as far as from safety aspect. But then you have a common area where you could have a training facility or EOC room that both sides of the building or the facility could use. There may be a newer, larger, improved council chambers, and things like that that are kind of in a common area. And a lot of this made a lot of sense, you know, as far as sharing this common area between the 2 sides, and then do your other public safety here and your administration over here. So just a thought.
So if it was a tear down and rebuild, we couldn't build, we'd have to use that building while the new one was being built.
I mean, depending on where the council wanted to, you know, put the building at that time. If it was where the existing one is, then we'd need to find a home for the police department for that probably 12 to 18-month process. And that would be hard, so building something next to it might be easier if we want to stay on this same campus. Or maybe there's another property in the city that works better. I mean, you know, those are the decisions that the council needs to make. And not today, obviously, but, you know. I mean, a good example is we could get drawings of the building put together. And, you know, that'll cost a bunch of money, but that instead of saving money and putting it in the bank, maybe we pay for the drawings so that we know where it's gonna go, what it's gonna look like. and then we're ready to go when we hit that kind of economic downturn. When contractors are looking for work, we can get a better deal because we're ready to go.
Plus, we would have to purchase some property, so if you have an idea of where you're going, the city did get signed a first right of refusal for the property next door with this in mind, that we get onto this building and build the police department out that way.
You would think it would make sense to keep the public safety within the center of the city than put it somewhere else. The location is, you're accessible to everything within the city limits.
Yeah.
Close.
It's a good location.
It is.
There's some benefits to being right next to the administration's building as well. And, you know, a lot of people come into our building looking for what they should be over here looking for and vice versa, so it's a short walk for them.
And it's a nuisance when they come looking at my building for yours.
Well, and maybe that's one of the discussions is what does the council envision for this block? You know, I mean, is there a day and time where the city should just own this entire block and it should be something, or is that just, you know, we own about 3/4 of the block, if you don't count if you include the library as part of the municipal or the government compound. I mean, is it worth, when those other properties come up for sale, looking at buying those two to, yeah, I mean, that's just the kind of stuff to, long-term vision to look at. And
Well,
maybe it's 30 years out, but.
It's been talked about since I was on the council the first time, owning this block, and then owning the block north Ogden Parks out. You know, eventually owning all that too, so, you know, I mean, these have been talked about for a long time, you know. I know we'd always talk about buying that house, and then we just kind of talked about when the people move out of those places over there, or get ready to sell those, that we would want to make offers. We talked about wanting to own Oak Park, you know, the house that's on the 2600. We talked about trying to buy that one at one time too. So, I mean, so we've talked about it as a council. I don't know what we need to do. I think it'd be great owning this block, you know, but I don't know how feasible it is. We'd have a swimming pool, you know.
And the employees would appreciate it.
What is the cost to have some idea of what a new public safety building layout would be? What are we looking at outlay?
If you want detailed plans, you're probably looking $150,000 to $200,000.
Wow.
But that's mechanical, electrical, that's engineered. If you want someone to just do a kind of a simple study, I imagine we could probably get someone to do some generic layouts for $10,000.
When we did as the city did I think it was the Blaylock study when they did the public works.
Yeah.
How much did that cost? I want to say, wasn't that about 25,000, something like that?
Okay.
You know, I mean, and that's been 10 years, maybe not even that long. You know,
Yeah.
maybe been that long, and so it's probably gone up some. That gave a lot of great information. You know, it was based on build out, and it wasn't based on property either. It was based on, this is what public works building would need, and so we could do similar things. Say, this is what we need a public safety building needs. This is what the needs are for the city to be built out to our 50,000 people. You know, and that's kind of what the Blaylock study was. So.
Well, and we do have another advantage with this type of facility, that there have been probably 6 completed in the last 2 years in the state. Does that sound right, Chief?
Oh, at least.
And so there's a lot of folks similar in size. I know, like Washington City did one recently that might be around the size, and so we might be able to steal some of their ideas and get a simple layout.
Did Farmington just remodel theirs? Or was it Centerville? I was in one of those cities, it seems like they just remodeled.
Farmington just did the Public Works building.
Is that what it was?
But the Spanish Fork or American Fork did one like 8 years ago. Spanish Fork has done one, but there's a lot of groups that have done new facilities for public safety that are smaller towns, you know, that would fit.
States.
Weaver State? How big is it?
Didn't they just do one, how long ago?
Oh, it's
Weaver States?
18 months maybe?
What's that, Weaver States?
Yeah, their public safety building. It was within the last 2 years.
It's been longer than that, because I've been up there for 2 years. So it's probably been 4 or 5. Oh, I can find out pretty easy.
But one thing we found is in talking with the architectural group that came in to just kind of help us spitball the ideas was to get an idea on square footage, cost per square foot is going to be really hard until you know what your finishes are going to look like. Because, you know, if you go with a wainscoting like this that's in this room, it's a lot more expensive than just doing drywall. And so we can even at the initial stage, the cost is not going to be tied down until someone picks those finishes, because it's
really expensive.
yeah, Gary.
Staff did it.
Staff did it, yeah.
How much does bars cost?
So Weaver State's facility, that still would be big enough though, would it? It's not very big.
No, we would probably need something a little bit bigger, but they share that facility with, I think they're parking enforcement and another group, I'm not sure, but see, we would have to incorporate a justice court in ours as well. I don't believe they have their own justice court, Weaver State. Just go to county or Ogden City.
I haven't committed many crimes up there lately, so I don't.
You just haven't got caught.
Okay, that's right.
Well, I would say we need to do some kind of study to find out, we need to do something so that we at least have something we're working towards. Get us an idea of what it costs.
John, do you remember what they were calling, it was not necessarily that they were gonna do drawing, but they were gonna do a
Like a feasibility
study.
And I can't remember what they quote us, but it would be enough that we probably should put it out to bid for several architects to say, hey, we want to do a feasibility study. I wanted to say it was $10,000 is what they were saying, but it wouldn't include extremely detailed elevations. It would be more of a floor plan. This is what modern public safety facilities include.
It'd give us some
Sounded like
basic
it's
dimensions.
Similar to Blaylock study.
Yeah.
The study was great. You know, we use it, the study was amazing, and the information it gave. So.
Would we do like the Public Works?
Design build, is that what you're talking about?
Put it up like design build?
That was design build.
Would something like that work too?
So it could work. It depends on if you were trying to connect it to this building, that would be harder to do because you're going to be trying to match some architectural elements between the two facilities. But if it was on its own, like if you did pick the old Public Works site, you could do a design build, but typically that's more geared towards metal buildings as opposed to other things. But those are also very cheap buildings, and there's nobody who says that a public safety building has to be brick or fancy. I mean, most people build them that way, but it's not a necessity. As long as it's secure, then the police have what they need. So that will be, because attractiveness versus functionality is what, I mean, when we talked to the architect, they said, oh, it could be $200 per square foot, or it could be $400 per square foot. So depending on what you want it to look like, it'll change dramatically the value or the cost.
Yeah, you definitely need an architect to attach it onto a building like this.
I like the idea of our campus being complete here versus, moving the police department over to the old Public Works side. I really like the idea of keeping it complete and the continuity, the ability for residents to, oops, I'm at the wrong place and all I have to do is walk to another building rather than having to get in my vehicle and drive somewhere else. And staff that are coming over here for different things back and forth. That certainly is something to keep into consideration. And the commercial value of that property over there, I think exceeds, I mean, we've got right of first refusal on this house here. If we do public safety here, that can go to commercial development over there. And I think the city's ahead financially rather than tying that up with a public safety over there. Just my thoughts. We watch close.
As we look at the infrastructure of the city, Dave, obviously we're looking at roads, we're looking at water lines, we're looking at sewer lines, all those kind of things. Updates. What percent of the city is old and what percent's new? And
So, I mean, we're doing very well as far as with the last 5 years, some of the infrastructure things that we've put in place, as far as putting money into water lines, obviously sewer lines. I think our sewer lines are ahead of, I would argue, with anybody in the state of Utah. The program that you guys have put in place as far as, lining our sewers, I say it's just as good as anybody else in the whole state. Our water lines, we're getting there, slowly but surely. There's obviously older parts of town. You've got down by Oaklawn Park, you've got Cameron Cove, that's an older part of town. You've got sections of Green Acres that were done back in the 90s, but there's still parts of it that we probably need to start, looking at. But those pockets are dwindling. I mean, there was a post on Facebook the other day saying something about our infrastructure failing and that our water lines were in bad shape. And to be honest with you, it's because this is the first time that they're actually seeing it in the public eye. Unless you had a water leak right in front of your house and we had to shut down, that section of 10 homes, you had no idea that we had water leaks, in our city. And so now that we're actually publicizing these things and putting them on these social medias, and so that you can actually see that, hey, we've got this leak here, we've got this leak here. So it looks like we're getting a lot more and it's the complete opposite of that. We were looking at it, and back in 2009, I think we had 36 water leaks that year in our city. Last year we only had 12 in the whole city, and 4 or 5 of them were things that we actually did, like where we actually went and dug up valves and replaced all the guts in them just because, for maintenance reasons. I mean, so the main breaks were down below 10. Which is, I mean, for a city our size is unbelievable. I mean, we've got neighboring cities that can get 10 in a month. So as far as water, we're in a really good place. I mean, but we need to keep that going. I know this tank, so we're putting a tank, for everybody that don't know, we're putting a new reservoir at Wadman Park there. So it's going where our pump house is now and the reservoir's there. We're just going to go to the east into the park a little bit. This one will be actually completely covered, so after it's constructed, we'll put topsoil back on it. We'll put a soccer field actually on top of the tank there, which is completely safe. The track will go kind of next to it, and so that's going to back us up from some of the waterline projects we've done over the last 4 years.